Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I want to talk to you today about another pre-reading technique that I like to use in my real method for pre-reading for Are You Ready for College? And this is the pre-reading technique that is affiliated with the letter E, and that is establishing context. Establishing context. So the real method for pre-reading involves step one, which is to read and to understand the beginning and the end of a chapter, making sure that you look at the information that they give you in terms of how they set the chapter up and the information they offer you there. And then to look at the end of the chapter to see when they want to give you a review of what they just covered, kind of getting a sense of what they say there. Just by looking at the beginning and the end, you can get a sense of what to expect in the chapter. The E method that I want to work on today, which is establishing context, is not as much relative to a real textbook in terms of the ones that are just kind of meant to inform and give information about, maybe psychology or sociology or one of the natural sciences. That first method that I gave you for reading is going to be great for that. However, when you get into an English class or communications class, maybe even history class, sometimes you're going to have to read texts that don't necessarily follow a regular textbook structure. And that's where you're going to need the E method that I want to give you today, which is establishing context. So one of the things that my students have to do whenever I work and teach developmental reading, and when I teach just basic understanding and reading coaching, is they have to understand an author that I've given them. They have to do some background information on that author. And so when you establish context, you do a background check on the author. It's one of the things you want to do. You want to know exactly who you're talking about. So for instance, in this textbook, Hillary Clinton's speech, Women's Rights or Human Rights, is an assigned text, right? So in this text, you got to do a background check on the author, right? So this was written in 1995, okay? So you have to think about who Hillary Clinton is in 1995 when she is President Bill Clinton's wife, as opposed to the Senator Hillary Clinton, or even the presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, because these are going to be two people who are, the same person who seems to be two different people at two different times, because they are living in two different realities, right? So she's Hillary Clinton in 1995, but who is she in 95? So when you read this speech, you have to read this speech with Hillary Clinton in 1995 in mind. You can't keep, Hillary Clinton 2016 in mind. You can kind of keep it there, but not completely. So when you do this, I teach all of my students to use a method called famous and infamous, right? So when you give yourself the ability to look at the good and bad qualities of a person, then you get a sense of a more rounded picture of the person. So you're able to put them in a stronger context. So one of the pre-reading skills you want to offer whenever you come to a new text, so you may have strong feelings about Mrs. Clinton one way or the other, it doesn't matter. You need to be able to stay objective enough to be able to read the text from or within the light in which it's offered, right? So I pick someone who's kind of controversial for my students, whether I'm coaching or whether I'm just, working with them in a context where I'm teaching them new information, so that they have to measure their emotions, whether they support her greatly or whether they hate her vehemently. They got to balance that thing out by playing good cop, bad cop, famous, infamous. And the way you do that is really simple. All you got to do is to create a T-chart, right? And so you do famous on one side and infamous on the other, right? So with this T-chart, you're going to put all of the things that she's famous for. So she's First Lady of the United States at one point, and when she delivers a speech, that's exactly who she is, okay? So she's good. And then on this side, you may put, some of the negative press that she received about Benghazi on that side. On this side, you may put that she was one of the most foremost first ladies in terms of being a major speaker in the United States. She was a global citizen, if you will, in that regard. Maybe you would put those types of things on the famous side. And on the infamous side, you may put, she was Secretary of State. There was some negative press about her, and the situation with the emails and how that impacted other people's lives, and ultimately cost her, more than likely, the presidential run back in 2016, right? Because of all the negative press. So you would put that on both sides, her good qualities and then the things that she's not so famous for. You line them up equally, and then that would give you a more even-handed point of view about this author before you step in to read a text about them. So you definitely want to establish context, maybe by playing good cop, bad cop, the famous infamous game. All right, so you want to do a background check on the author. The second thing you want to do in order to make this work is to establish ethos with that author, right? So you maybe want to look at maybe where did Clinton go to school? What kind of information has she learned? Is she a credible speaker? Is this someone I can really pay attention to and kind of put my faith in as it relates to this topic? Well, let's go back and look at the text again. So this text is Women's Rights or Human Rights, right? And it was written in 1995. So at this point, Mrs. Clinton has graduated from college, and she is speaking at an event that's dealing with women's issues, hence talking about women's rights or human rights. A lot of times whenever you get situations like this, your professor or your teacher is going to likely give you background information on the author, right? So this is something that my students would get, and this would be her bio, right? And so in this bio, we would see that she went to Yale Law School, that she went to Wesley College for women, and that she was in student government, and that you'll see that later on she married President Clinton, and then you'll find that at a point she is, while she's First Lady of the state of Arkansas, she's an advocate for children and families and serves on the board of children's hospitals and legal defense funds for children, etc. So we can pretty much say that she's kind of established as a women's speaker and a women's rights advocate and a children's rights advocate, right? So her ethos may be established here, and this is establishing context for who she is as a speaker. So this is one of the pre-reading things you'd want to do before you even deal with the text at all, okay? You want to get a sense of who's the speaker and what are they saying, right? And so you can go to Wikipedia, you can go to a variety of things, go to their website, their web pages, in order to get a background point of view about the author, okay? So another thing that you should do to establish context is not just to find out about the author to determine if they are credible or if, you know, they have some things in their past that would make them least likely to be people that you'd want to listen to. You also need to think about other things. You also need to think about, when was this text written? So you want to think about the year. So for instance, Women's Rights or Human Rights, was written in 1995, right? So you have to think about what's going on in the world in 1995. So I usually tell the students I work with, you know, give Google about 10 minutes of your time. If you don't have that much time to give Google, maybe give Google 5 minutes or maybe 2 minutes, but do something just to get a sense of what's going on in the world at that time. And if you can do that, then you probably can situate what she's saying or what the piece is communicating to you within a space that's appropriate for that time. So you're establishing context. You're looking at a large picture to make sure that you're completely understanding what's being stated, right? And you're not making what we call illogical interpretive leaps with maybe the answers that you're given to a question because you're thinking about an image or a time frame or a person in a really expansive scope over a large period of time. You can look at them that way, but you probably should always look at the piece in the year that that piece was established. And that speaks to the occasion. Why did this piece come into existence? Another thing that you want to think about when you are thinking about this concept of establishing a background, you want to think about what are the rhetorical strategies that the writer or the speaker is using, right? Are they using rhetorical questions in order to guide their readers into open-minded thinking? Is there a piece meant to just inform you about something? Is there a piece meant to persuade you? What methods are they using to persuade you? Are they telling you a lot of stories and giving you a lot of anecdotes? So you want to kind of take a look at how the piece is set up and maybe the way that they are structuring their information. Do they use subheadings, or do they just have paragraphs? You want to look at these types of things, because that could make a big impact on how you understand the information and how you take that information in. Okay, so don't forget, whenever you have a new text that you've not read yet, you need to establish context before you start answering questions and before you take a deep dive into the information. All right, don't forget to look at the title. Don't forget to ask questions of the title. Don't forget to look at the year something is written. Don't forget to ask questions about that year. Last but not least, certainly not least, make sure that you think about the author. Think about the person who's presenting this information to you, and see if you can find out a little bit more about them so that you can contextualize what they're saying. Thanks so much for logging in today, and don't forget to join us again. We are going to look at the next level of pre-reading on the next video. Stay tuned.